Well, good evening, everybody. It's Pretty Raitira here, luxury wedding planner from Pretty Raitira Events. And I'm also on Instagram doing an Insta Live today as well. And a very warm welcome to you, Rafique Patel, who's joining us from Bond Adam Solicitors, a very highly qualified solicitor, I must say, and our paths have crossed a few times. And thank you very much for joining me here tonight, Rafique, to talk about weddings. I know that's not your forte. I know you're a very happily married man, but there's lots of couples out there that unfortunately have had to postpone their weddings or cancel their weddings because of the current pandemic that we are in. And because of the cancellations, there's been a number of issues that they've had to face. So thank you very much for joining me here live so that we can have a quick chat to help guide some of these couples that are tuned in with us via Insta and of course via Facebook Live as well. I'm going to go straight into the questions because I know there may be other questions that may also appear. Are they going to appear as well? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So there'll be other ones coming. But I've had a few questions that have already been emailed over to me. So the first one, and I think you have the questions in front of you as well, but for the benefit of those that are joining me live, I have a couple that have emailed me saying, I only just booked out my wedding venue a few weeks before the lockdown and paid a £5,000 deposit. Unfortunately, I never got round to buying any wedding insurance. My wedding date has been booked for October the 17th. From what everyone is saying, no big weddings will be taking place this year. My wedding venue is refusing to give back my deposit. And no dates for next year are suited to me and my fiance. What advice would you give us?
Okay, Pretty, thank you very much for having me on. I know you're a very famous in the wedding industry, so I'm delighted to be on, and very sorry to hear about the situation that everyone is having. It is a very big legal issue in terms of contracts generally, not just wedding contracts, as to venues and companies saying that they can't comply with their contracts because of government law. I'm just going to very quickly talk to you about what is law and what is guidance. Now, law is that a restaurant has to close. Guidance is, for example, social distancing. I don't think you should have as many people in the venue and things like that. Now, this question to the person who's involved is, you're right that it may well be that on October the 17th, there may not be a lot of people coming to your wedding. However, the law does not say that the venue has to close. Now, if the law was that the venue had to close, you could go to the venue and say, look, I paid you for a wedding. I'm sorry, you cannot now perform the contract because you have to close. I want my money back. That is not the situation. And that's a problem that unfortunately you're in, because the wedding venue is going to say, I can perform your wedding. It's your choice that you've decided not to go ahead because you think a lot of people are not going to come. I am not going to give you your money back. So unfortunately, you're in a very difficult situation because the wedding venue can perform their contract. I hope that's answered question number one, Pretty.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I mean, we are still waiting for more guidance in terms of the hospitality business, in terms of, you know, kind of the those wedding suppliers. We're still waiting on more guidance in terms of weddings for this year, because there's still some couples that are holding their hopes up high in hope that they're still able to have the lavish wedding that they had planned. You know, they still want their dream wedding. So there's lots of people, and in fact, what we do know through some of the statistics that have come through is 35,000 weddings have been postponed or cancelled throughout the UK, which is quite a lot of weddings. And we are in full wedding season at this moment in time, and there's no weddings taking place unless couples have totally downsized to no more than 5. So I think we're all watching this space.
And that's a statistic that sadly is very live because of people coming together. However, if on October the 17th it says that you cannot have a congregation,
yeah,
the R number's gone up, or there's a significant rise in fatalities or something like that, and your wedding venue is not able to carry out your wedding, then you are able to say to them, I'm sorry, you cannot now perform my wedding. It's nothing to do with me. I want my money back. And the law is they have to give it back. So
the venue are obliged to give their money back.
They have, because they can't perform your contract.
Right.
Not anything to do with you. It's to the law. What they can't say is, I am taking your money. The government has said we can't perform it. But no, you cannot perform the contract, and so I want my money back.
Right, and I think that's a bit of a grey line, because you'll see this in my other questions as well. If we move on to question number 2, then there's a question here. We were supposed to have got married on the 9th of May this year, and obviously due to the lockdown, the wedding didn't go ahead. Apart from 2 of my suppliers, all have offered to carry over the deposit to next year. The 2 suppliers who are unable to deliver my wedding for the new day next year are not receiving calls or even emails, not returning emails or taking any calls. And are they obliged to give us our deposit back?
Okay, so the key words in the question are unable to deliver.
Yeah.
There is something in law called force majeure. Some people might have heard of it. It basically is a clause in a contract that says if there is an act of God or uncertain, then the wedding venue is able to say, I cannot perform your contract, and I am able to retain your deposit for some costs that I have suffered because of this act of God, which is not within my control. Now, if that clause is in the contract, which is an act of God, which is clearly this is, we're able to say, we have gone to costs, insurance, whatever, and so I'm retaining your deposit. However,
so can I just stop you there? So can venues actually retain that deposit then, because they're saying, well, we were not able to open that date up to other couples?
Yes, that is if they've got the clause about the act of God, it's called force majeure. They're to say, we have suffered a loss, and therefore we are able to take your deposit, and maybe even you owe us a bit more because we couldn't do the contract, but our loss is the same. You see,
right?
The clause is very important, and I'm happy to take queries, privately, but I am going to need to see the contract.
Sure. Okay. No, I mean that's a really good point, and obviously for those clients, those couples that are tuned in, Rafique is available to review any contracts. So if you want to send them through, you can contact him at Bond Adam Solicitors.
Yes.
Or you can drop me an email, and I'll happily forward that on to Rafique. So thank you very much for that.
Sure.
Question number 3 then. Sarah was due to get married on Saturday, 21st of March, just before the lockdown began. But the day after the government announced pubs and hotels would have to close. The couple's wedding photographer pulled out because he was in the vulnerable group, and a lot of their guests were dropping out too. They checked with the insurer, who assured them that they would be able to make the claim. However, the day after their wedding, it was all set up on the Friday, and then they saw what was going on in the news and watched the press briefing announcing the closure of hotels and venues. At that point, they did ring up their insurance company, but they ended up still continuing with their wedding. So their vicar got them married with a limited amount of people, but their venue where the reception was supposed to take place actually closed it down. So it was the venue that had to close it down. And unfortunately, since that day, they're still battling with the venue in trying to get their money back. Now, the insurance company assured them that they would be able to make a claim, but now their insurance company is also saying, no, sorry, we can't pay out because of what you just said is an act of God.
Okay, interesting. So what I need to see is I need to see the terms of your insurance and the exclusions. Often there is an exclusion that if there is something outside the control of the insurer and the venue, then the insurer will not cover it because it's something that they could not have factored in when they charge you for the insurance premium. So what I'm looking for here is I assume you've bought insurance on the basis that the venue has gone into liquidation, the venue can't perform the contract, or one of those events. If that's the case, then ordinarily you would be able to claim on your insurance, but I need to see the exclusion. If the exclusion says, yes, anything other than an act of God, unfortunately you won't be able to claim because this is an act of God.
Right.
So that is the long and short of it. I need to see your insurance and I need exclusions.
So it's always, I guess it's very difficult for those couples that don't have a legal background like yourself to read between the lines in terms of what they're covered for and what they're not covered for. And of course, each insurance company differs quite a lot. I know when the first time when a client talks to me, books their wedding with me as a wedding planner, the first question I ask them is, have you taken out wedding insurance? And if they say no, that's the first thing I advise them to do, take out wedding insurance. And I am aware that there are some insurance companies out there that are better than those, better than others. Obviously, I'm not going to name any here on this platform, but I am also aware that at this moment in time, that lots of couples seem to be struggling with some of the good insurance companies as well. I think that's really interesting that it's about reading between those lines and maybe taking those contracts back to lawyers like yourself to get it double checked. So once again, those of you that want to speak to a lawyer, just to have someone look through your contracts, whether they are contracts with your suppliers or your venues, or even with your insurance, do contact myself or Rafique from Bond Adam Solicitors, and we'll try and help you wherever we can. Thank you for that, Rafique. Question number 4 then. Can a supplier, and I think you partly answered this, can a supplier retain some of the deposit if they can't deliver on an event?
Similar pretty to what we said before, it does the fault lie. So ordinarily, if you were going into a shop and you were going to buy something and you put down a deposit and the shop wasn't able to deliver, you would get your deposit back.
Yeah.
In this scenario, if they've built into the contract that, again, if there's an act of God, something outside of our control, and that's why we can't perform the contract, then I'm entitled to inflict that loss on you, then they can retain the deposit. You may find that some larger venues might have that clause in the contract. Some smaller ones may not have. And if that's the case, you're entitled to say, look, it's not my fault that you can't perform the contract. I want my money back.
Sure.
Again, I need to read the exclusion.
Yeah, and what's a fair amount? If a supplier, for example, we've already heard about an experience of Sarah, who was supposed to get married on Saturday, the 21st of March, and of course her wedding went ahead in the church with her vicar, but then the reception couldn't go ahead later on that evening. Now she kind of wants to make a claim for the flowers. But not for the bouquets, because she did use the bouquets, but not the flowers. She'd already paid for the flowers. She'd already paid for catering for 150 people. And of course, there wasn't 150 people and there was no guests to attend the reception. So how much of that money can a supplier hold on to? If you have paid a deposit and if you have paid the full amount, how much can a supplier? What's a fair amount?
All right. So the clauses generally, if they're drafted properly, will allow you something called a genuine pre-estimate of your loss. So, for example, if the venue hire is £10,000 and the cost is £5,000, your profit element is £5,000. You're able to go to the customer and say, look, my loss was £5,000. I've got your deposit of 5,000 or 3,000 or whatever. I'm going to take that. So it has to be based on loss. If you've suffered no loss at all because you haven't taken on any cleaning staff, you've not cleaned the kitchens, you've had no cost whatsoever, then the whole of the deposit should go back. So that's one of the factors. If they do throw that at you, you can say, hang on, what's your estimate of your loss?
Sure.
Loss were you going to make? You've got X amount of my deposit. I want to know the loss you are going to make. Generally, you'll find that you'll never get an answer where the loss is less than the deposit that you've got, because here is to take the deposit, but always push really hard for that scenario.
Sure. So in terms of Sarah's case, she would have paid her caterers the full amount, because it was actually the day before her wedding where the venue pulled out. So the reception couldn't go ahead, and she would have paid her florist in full. The caterers would have supplied or not supplied the food. They would have booked out the waiters, I guess, to serve the food. So in which case, I guess from the caterer's point of view, if they retained the full amount, that would be fair, right?
It would be, because they've already suffered the cost.
The loss, right.
And
the other thing that she also goes on to say is, can she then make a claim on her insurance? And of course, you've answered that partly, because it goes down to the force majeure clause in any contract.
It is. She's in a very unfortunate situation.
Yeah.
Laura will probably say, act of God, out of our control, we're not going to pay. And if she goes to get her money back from the venue, they'll say, we've already suffered all the costs, so there's nothing we can do about it.
It's so unfortunate. I mean, we just spoke about 35,000 weddings have been cancelled or postponed between the date of the lockdown and now, and young couples that have saved their lifetime savings for that special day, that could be a deposit on a house, have just lost all that money overnight.
Yes. But look, if I can say this to you, is that don't take the first answer, which is, I'm sorry, due to government guidance, your money is gone. And push really hard, because Sarah's situation is a very unusual one. It's been cancelled within a very short amount of time, but most of you will be in situations where you've got weddings to come, and don't just take the answer that I'm sorry, your deposit is gone, because in many of those situations there will be no cost whatsoever so far. And the thing you have to look at the time of your wedding, is it guidance or is it law? If it's guidance, then you can say to the venue that there is no law saying I can't have 500 people. Now, that may be a risk that you take as a couple, that if people fall ill, then that is going to be something on your head. But it's not the law, you understand?
Right.
Very different, the law, which is, I'm sorry, restaurant, you cannot open, barber, you cannot open, venue, you cannot open, and guidance, which is you can open, but we're suggesting you should have distancing.
Right.
So that's another one, that just don't take it for an answer, which is, I'm sorry, you can only have 100 people.
Sure.
well, if you can only have 100 people because you're following government guidance, booked it for 500 people, then I want some of my money back.
Of course.
Because it's you following government guidance, but you want the same amount of money. You see what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
There is a health consideration that you as a couple have to take into account.
Of course.
Which is if you decide to have 500 people there with no social distancing whatsoever and people fall ill, then they will be turning to you in terms of any health issues.
Yeah, yeah, of course. No, absolutely. And I guess again, couples that are still taking, the risk, if you like, in continuing with their plans for later on this year, in hope that the government will loosen up some of these restrictions, they still may able to get married with 100 people attending their wedding. We just don't know that at this point.
Yes. Yes.
Although there is a lot of conversations going on at this moment in time that if you are due to get married this year, postpone until next year. Only get married this year if you can limit your numbers.
Yes, yes. And that to the issue of guidance and law again.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Another question I have is some suppliers have increased their prices for next year. Is this fair? So if a couple have booked a photographer, for example, this year, and they've already paid the full amount for £2,000, and the photographer said, well, next year my prices go up by £500, and I'm not going to give you your deposit back. Is that fair?
Okay, great lawyer's question here, because we go to the contract, and for example, I was reading a manufacturing contract last week where clients are buying some machinery for millions of pounds, and these type of clauses appear, which is from the time you place the order and the time we come to deliver it in 7 months' time. If our prices have gone up, we are entitled to increase our prices. So the first thing I said to our client is, well, we need to fix that price now, because what if it happens that they suddenly say it's a 25% extra cost? They are going to inflict that on you. And the client said, you're absolutely right. I am not signing a contract where there's an increase, number one. Number two, it could be a completely open-ended increase.
Yeah.
Right. We have to look at the contract. If the contract does not allow the photographer to increase the price, they cannot increase the price.
So that should be stipulated in the photographer's contract.
Yes, because you have bought a product at X price, so a photographer at £2,500. The contractor has failed to stipulate in the contract that if there is I can't imagine what's going to go up. The price of camera film is not based on a pandemic. Do you know what I mean?
That's just an example. I have heard that certain costs, we don't even know for destination weddings, for example, with airlines, if a lot of airlines are going to be going bankrupt, will other airlines then start to charge a premium rate for guests to attend weddings at a destination? We don't know that. Is that fair? Is that fair even for the couple, having to pay such an expensive price?
Yes, fair point. I think airlines will clearly have it within their contracts that will have significant contracts building in price increases, which they do for fuel surcharges and all sorts of things. Now, for example, EasyJet, what I've heard, have got to, or the government's going to give guidance that you should keep one seat free in the middle. EasyJet's price is going to increase because the cost having a carrier, an Airbus with however many seats is going to go up. They increase their seats. I can guarantee you within their contract they will have that.
Sure.
Dealing with a photographer, or a wedding venue comes along and says, yes, I'll allow you to postpone, but in October or March next year, I'm going to put my price up. If they haven't got it in their contract, they can't do it.
They can't do it. So they can't just assume that clients would be willing to pay an annual increase each year because their own prices go up each year unless it's not stipulated. They can't make that assumption that clients will pay.
Yeah, so for example, we've probably seen that there's been some unscrupulous grocers who have been charging vegetables horrendous amounts, chilies, 15. My wife was telling me the other day, I said, we'll do without chilies, 15 pounds for a kilo.
Yeah.
If a wedding venue says, I'm sorry, the price of vegetables, the price of meat have gone up, I'm going to inflict that on you. If it's in the contract, that's fair enough.
Right.
Not in the contract, it can't be done. So look at the contract in terms of the payment terms and like that, and you will know fairly quickly what the scenario is.
Sure. Okay. So it's again about studying the contracts, whether it's a contract with your supplier or a contract with your insurer.
Sure.
And if you don't understand something, pass it on to somebody that does, like yourself.
But simply don't take the first answer from the venue or the supplier photographer as your answer. Say, where is it that I find this answer? You're telling me I can't have my money back. You're telling me you will give me a credit note, but you're going to inflict another 5,000, 2,000 to me. Show me in the contract exactly where I can find that.
Of course.
Okay.
Do you think, and again, so between now and next year's wedding season, we've got a whole year to wait. If suppliers started to change their contracts now and forcefully push that onto their clients from now, is that fair? Can they do that, to saying, by the way, we've updated our contract and this is the contract that we'll be following for next year? Are they allowed to do that?
If you signed a contract already, it doesn't allow a variation. They can't do it. For example, you will know from banks that you regularly get new sets of terms and conditions in the post. It's because they have got it in their contracts that they can regularly vary their contracts. And you've got to see whether there's a provision for a variation. Some of the smaller venues, caterers, photographers won't have it. Some of the bigger ones who are more professional, they may have it.
Okay. So that's quite interesting as well, because this is something else I've also heard from some clients saying that this is the issue that I've had, that they're trying to force a new contract upon us, and that's come from a couple of clients who have signed contracts with some venues. So that's quite good advice. If it's not in there, they can't really force them to do it, because again, I guess they can put the prizes up. They can say, "Oh, we can cancel your wedding last minute, and you'll incur all the costs." You don't know what you're signing up to, and you don't know what changes suppliers now will be making as a result of lessons learned from this pandemic.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And finally, I have a question from Kajal and Raj. Kajal and Raj are supposed to be getting married in August this year, and due to social distancing measures, the venue is saying they cannot have as many people as anticipated attending their wedding. They have also said caterers will have to serve food at the table, and only families who live together can sit on the tables of 10. The venue have also said the couple can have a DJ, but dancing is not allowed except for the couple themselves. The couple have asked if they can postpone so that they can make a claim on their insurance. But the venue is not allowing this to happen, as they don't have dates for next year that are suitable for Kajal and Raj. And Kajal and Raj can't cancel themselves, as the insurance company will not cover them if they do. So what advice do you have for them?
Okay, so on the insurance, Pretty, it's quite clear that if you self-inflict on yourself, you cannot then turn to an insurer. and a cancellation by yourself, you cannot claim. That's that. Dealing with venue. It's a social distancing question again. If you paid for a venue that has 500 people, and that venue says, for social distancing reasons, we're only going to have 250 people,
yeah,
you have to go to the venue and say, well, that's something you put in place, but the reality is, I want half my money back. They say, well, no, sorry, social distancing. Say, no, I booked a venue for 500 people. You either cancel my contract and give me my money back, or you allow me to have 500 people. Now, I've obviously said that if you have 500 people at a venue that has 500 people and somebody falls ill, you as a couple may have some issues. Different, because the law does not inflict a 2-meter social distancing. It says where you can. Okay? Now, if this venue says, I'm going to do that, but you can only have 250 people. So you can say, hang on, I want my social distancing to be 1 meter.
sure.
If 400 people or 350 people, why does it have to be 2 meters? There is nothing in law, even for employers, to say that you have to have 2 meters. It says 2 meters where possible. So
Right.
it's not 1 meter. If you go into Sainsbury's and you go on the self-serving desks where you pay yourself and you scan it, they're not 2 meters.
No, absolutely.
It's only about half a meter.
Yeah,
There's a screen there.
yeah,
You can say to your venue, I want to have 350 people. You can space people out, but you cannot tell me I can only have 200 people.
sure.
Oh, I'm sorry, you can only have 200 people. Right, I want my money back. Because you're doing good practice. But it has told you, I've got to have everybody 2 meters apart. Do you see what I mean?
Sure.
It would be a pretty sad wedding.
Absolutely. I mean, I just can't imagine what, Kajal and Raj's wedding will be like. I mean, obviously they can have a DJ, but no dancing. So, and normally families are of, 4 to 6 people. So how can you get a family full of 10 round the same table? So I appreciate that the venue is trying hard to try and keep social guidance, social distancing measures, but like you said, it's guidance as opposed to law.
Yes, if you decide, and I'll be simplistic and a bit facetious now, but if the guidance is you shouldn't drink 10 cans of Coke a day, and the supermarket says, we've got guidance, we're only to sell you 5, that's not law, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
If the government said, I'm sorry, you have to have 2 meters of social distancing, the venue can say, I'm sorry, it's law. Force majeure, I've got your money, 2 meter social distancing, there's nothing you can do about it.
Sure.
It's guidance, and it's the same for employers. Otherwise, if the government said to employers, you've got to have 2 meter social distancing, I can tell you, most small businesses could not open. Government hasn't done that because he knows everyone's different.
Sure.
So, Kajal and Raj, go to them and say, where does it say in law you've got to have 2 meters distancing? Show me that.
Sure.
If you do it, it's fine. I want my money back. Then you've got a battle on your hands.
Yeah.
But I need to see the contract again.
Sure. No, absolutely.
That's the general position. Do not just take, I'm sorry, social distancing. I've got all your money. There's nothing you can do about it.
Nothing you can do about it. No, absolutely. Well, that's been really informative, Rafique. Thank you so much for joining me here tonight. What's your last bit of advice to all those couples that are due to get married this year, maybe having to postpone next year, what's your last bit of advice to them?
Look, if you can get a credit note and postpone till this all clears up, do that. Because generally, even if you people are very, very nervous about going to big gatherings anyway. So if you can postpone and they're offering you a credit note, take it. If they're being difficult, challenge them. Don't just take their word for it. Ask for a copy of the contract and fight as hard as you can. Obviously, we do act for companies and people like that, and we offer some advice. If it's not in the contract, you need to give the money back, because it's guidance, it's not law.
Sure, sure. And just one final question then. If because there's lots of small businesses out there that are suffering at this moment in time, and they may not have a comprehensive contract. It could be I don't know. It could be a florist, or it could be photographer, or whatever it is. A very small single-handed company doesn't have a comprehensive contract. Really does need to retain the money that was given to them as a deposit. Needs to retain that money because it's to do with their own livelihood as well. In terms of those suppliers, what advice do you have for them in terms of their contracts?
So yes, look, it is a sad time for suppliers, and you should have something built into your contracts that allows you to vary your price if sadly you are inflicted with a higher price for, the cost of vegetables, the cost of meat's gone up. You need to be able to protect yourself. Otherwise, you've taken £10,000 for a venue, and now it's cost you £8,000 or £9,000, or even more than £10,000. Have good contracts in place. I'm not saying whether you come to us or whether you go to lawyers that but we regularly draft contracts for all our suppliers, photographers, venues, etc., to protect you the best that you can, because you need to sustain your businesses as well. So having it in writing just clears up a lot of grey area for everybody.
Sure. Well, great. Well, thank you very much for joining me this evening here, Rafique. And I'm sure our paths will cross again. And once again, for anybody that wants some legal advice, to whether it's to check through your contracts with your suppliers or your venue, do give Rafique Patel from Bond Adam Solicitors a call, or drop him an email, or of course you can drop me an email and I'll happily forward it on to Rafique. So thank you very much once again, Rafique, and hope to see you again very, very soon.
Thank you, Priti. Thank you, everyone.
See you. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye. Well, that kind of brings us to the end of the conversation with Rafique Patel. And of course, from me, luxury wedding planner, Priti Rai, thank you very much for all of you that have been tuning in tonight. I hope you found that conversation with Rafique informative. I will be back next week talking to a colleague of mine who I work with as a destination wedding planner all the way in Malta. So I will be speaking to Mary next week as well on this same platform. For those of you that haven't yet made a decision about whether you are going to continue with your wedding this year or whether you need to postpone to next year, if you don't have a wedding planner, well then of course here I am. I'm a luxury wedding planner. I've won 4 awards last year: the Midland Asian Wedding Award, the Britain Asian Wedding Award, also the Best Host. So I do act as Master of Ceremonies at weddings as well. And of course, for those of you that know that I also work on the radio, I can see some people that tune into my radio program are also joining me live. You know that I also won the award for Best Radio Presenter last year. But for anybody who still needs a wedding planner for their wedding for next year or later on this year, do feel free to give me a call. Look me up. It's www.prettyrightura.com, or follow me on my Insta at pretty_Raichura. I did try to do Insta Live, but I think it went on a bit weird. But anyway, I'll be back next week. Once again, I hope this was informative. Thank you very much to Burma. You're saying they need to start virtual weddings. Well, do you know something? As a wedding planner, that's exactly what I am looking at. Dina Mystery, you're saying very informative. I'm glad you found that to be very informative. I do believe that not all the messages were coming through for some reason, but hey ho, anybody that wants to drop me an email, do drop me an email at hello@prettyraichura.com, and I will pass it on to Rafique if it's to do with any legal issues, or of course if it's anything to do with wedding planning, you can drop me an email or of course give me a call. But from me now, good night, stay blessed. Good night.